Welcome back to the program. Into ASEAN interview now. We take a look at what's happening with the refugee situation over in Bangladesh with our Rohingya community. Seems a new call has come out from UN Refugee Special Envoy Angelina Jolie to call for more commitment from the world as well especially as the Myanmar government to help the Rohingya
ค่ะในช่วงอาเซียนอินเทอร์วิวค่ะไปดูสถานการณ์โรฮิงญาเองนะคะซึ่งทางแองเจลิน่าโจลีซึ่งเป็นนักแสดงฮอลลีวูดค่ะก็ได้ออกมาแสดงถึงความคิดเห็นว่าเมียนมาเนี่ยค่ะควรที่จะมุ่งมั่นยุติความรุนแรงต่อมุสลิมโรฮิงญาไปติดตามกันได้ค่ะ
UN Refugee Agency Special Envoy Angelina Jolie visited camps in Bangladesh for Muslim Rohingya refugees from Myanmar this week, and on Tuesday, earlier on February 5th, she condemned the world's failure to prevent a crisis that saw 730,000 people driven from their homes. Jolie's visit came as the United Nations said it was preparing to launch a new appeal for $920 million to support the refugees who fled a brutal military crackdown in neighboring Rakhine State in Myanmar in response to militant attacks in August 2017. UN investigators have accused Myanmar's army of carrying out mass killings and rapes with genocidal intent during the massive offensive that laid waste to hundreds of Rohingya villages in the western Rakhine State. Myanmar denies the charge and says its offensive was a legitimate response to an insurgent threat and has pledged to welcome the refugees back. But the United Nations says conditions are not yet right for return. The Rohingya say they want guarantees over their safety and to be recognized as citizens before returning. The Hollywood actress addressed a crowd of refugees on a hilltop in Kutupalong camp in the world's largest refugee settlement in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar district. Jolie said she had met stateless Rohingya who described being treated like cattle in Myanmar.
It was deeply upsetting to meet the families who have been known and have only known persecution and statelessness their whole lives, who speak of being treated like cattle. I am therefore thankful that here in Bangladesh, Rohingya refugees have their existence recognized and are being provided by the government and UNHCR with documentation and proof of their identity.
Myanmar government spokesman Chaw Thai did not pick up a call seeking comment. Jolie flew to Bangladesh earlier this week to assess the humanitarian needs of the Rohingya refugees and some of the more critical challenges facing Bangladesh as a host country.
In a matter of months, over 700,000 people were forced from their homes in Myanmar's Rakhine State into Bangladesh. A year and a half later, they are still arriving. While the death toll is unknown, reports suggest that many thousands have been killed since the violence broke out in Myanmar, including women and children. Everyone has been left traumatized. Bangladesh's generosity in giving Rohingya people a place of safety is a significant and visible gesture of humanity. Where we stand today, it hosts the largest and most densely populated refugee camp. They have been denied their most basic human right, citizenship in their country of birth, and some still won't even call the Rohingya by their rightful name. The people responsible for human rights violations must be held accountable for their actions. While UNHCR is ready to support efforts to improve conditions, there have been very little progress on the ground. The Rohingya cannot return to Myanmar at this time. It was deeply upsetting to meet the families who have been known and have only known persecution and statelessness their whole lives, who speak of being treated like cattle, absolute right to return home, but only when they feel it is safe enough to do so voluntarily, and they know that their rights will be respected. And finally, and more importantly, to the Rohingya refugees, I want to say I am humble and proud to stand with you today. You have every right to live in security, to be free to practice your religion, and to coexist with people of other faiths and ethnicities. You have every right not to be stateless, and the way you have been treated shames us all.
The United Nations Refugee Agency spokesman said the visit came ahead of the launch of a new appeal to seek to raise $920 million to continue to meet the basic needs of the Rohingya. Last year, UN agencies launched a $950 million appeal for the Rohingya influx. Well, this was Jolie's first visit to Bangladesh. She met Rohingya refugees in Myanmar earlier in 2015 and in India in 2006. The Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commission, or RRRC, a government organization created to deal with the Rohingya crisis, they welcomed Jolie's visit. More than 730,000 Rohingya fled Buddhist-dominated Myanmar 18 months ago in the wake of an army crackdown described as ethnic cleansing by UN investigators, and they're now living in camps in neighboring Bangladesh with no sign of moving. Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh cannot return to Myanmar in the near future, according to the human rights investigator. Investigators added that a campaign of violence against the Rohingya continues in Myanmar. Yanghee Lee, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar, spoke at a news conference in Dhaka at the end of her trip to Thailand and Bangladesh. She met officials and Rohingya driven out of western Rakhine State after the army crackdown in 2017. Since August 2017, nearly 1 million Rohingya have fled Rakhine to Bangladesh, where they now live in overcrowded camps. Lee's trip to the region this week included visits to Cox's Bazar in southern Bangladesh, where the camps housing Rohingya refugees are located. She also visited Bhasan Char, a remote island on the Bay of Bengal, where the Bangladeshi authorities have been building new temporary accommodations. Bangladesh says moving refugees to Bhasan Char, whose name means floating island, will ease the chronic overcrowding in existing camps. But some humanitarian groups have criticized the plan, saying the island is vulnerable to frequent cyclones and cannot sustain the livelihoods of thousands of people.
The campaign of violence against the Rohingya continues, with the security forces slowly bleeding the remaining Rohingya population and continuing to force them to flee to Bangladesh. I visited the so-called Zero Line, the area along the border where more than 4,000 Rohingya refugees live within walking distance of their houses a few miles away. A visit to this area is a lesson in Myanmar recalcitrance and highlights that authorities there are not sincere in their discussions of repatriation. Security forces on the Myanmar side of the border are engaging in an intimidation campaign in the apparent hope of driving this group out of the Zero Line and into Bangladesh territory. This includes shooting into the air to scare the community and blaring broadcasts which state that they are not Myanmar citizens and that they should leave Myanmar territory. It is clear that Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh cannot return to Myanmar in the near future. Now that the election in Bangladesh has concluded, I encourage the government to begin to engage in longer-term planning and prepare the local population for this reality. A failure to do so will not only have negative consequences for the refugee population, but also for Bangladesh, including most significantly the host community who are already given so much to accommodate the refugees. There's gunfire nearby. I have been told that the military is constructing new bases. It is imperative that any measures to relocate the refugees enhance their enjoyment of rights and do not create a new crisis. In this regard, I urge caution and patience by the Bangladesh government and full cooperation with the UN and the international community. There should be no rush to relocate refugees, such as before the monsoon season, which is one of the possibilities that has been outlined to me. The causes of the current Rohingya situation lie in Myanmar, and it is to Myanmar that we must look for this solution. Its campaign of violence against ethnic minorities, including the Rohingya, the Kayen, the Kachin, and the Shan, must end. Real steps must be taken to implement the recommendations of the UN and the Kofi Annan Commission, including by ensuring that the citizenship of the Rohingya is realized. It should be fully upheld, and authorities here must recall that this group also fled persecution in Myanmar. Okay. Now, it goes back to my basic feeling that once you relocate people out of Cox's Bazar, I mean, everybody wants to go back home if it's conducive. You want to go back home. If you're traveling, you want to go back home. I want to go home. I've been on this mission, and I want to go. The feeling of wanting to go back home is a human nature. But let's not forget that if there is easy relocation to other parts, what are we saying to Myanmar? You can do all these things, you can drive people out and we'll take them and we'll find solutions for them. There's no accountability for Myanmar too. So the pressure needs to be still facing towards Myanmar and its responsibility.
Lee called on the Bangladesh government to consult with the UN and humanitarian agencies before any move to Basan Char, which she said should not be done in haste.
Oh, thank you very much.
And those were the updates on ASEAN Challenge this week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. As for now, สวัสดีค่ะ